Hi, my name's Nina and this is a workshop for Hospital Rooms Digital Art School. So I'm a painter, and something that is really important to the way I make are the materials that I use. So things like the pigments, the types of paint, the surfaces I choose to paint on. I think the thing that interests me are the stories and the histories embedded in those things. So the thing that I'm going to teach you how to make today is egg tempera paint. And egg tempera paint is a very, very old type of paint. And if any of you have ever seen panel paintings from the Middle Ages, they're probably painted in egg tempera paint. So first off, you need some sort of palette. And this is my glass palette that I use to mix on, but you can use any sort of hard surface, like one of those water resistant palettes is totally fine, or maybe you've got a plate or a piece of perspex, something like that. The next thing you need some spoons are handy if you have them for spooning out pigment. Now the next thing you need, and you don't need this, your nails are fine, but I've got a toothpick for pricking the egg yolk. You need a few jars or cups or containers, and therefore catching the egg yolk, the egg white, and you just need something to mix the water up to clean your brushes in. The next things you need are the fun parts. So you need some eggs, and the fresher the eggs the better, and I'll tell you why a bit later. The other things you need are some dry pigments. I generally get my pigments from a shop called AP Fitzpatrick in London, and why is because they're really knowledgeable about pigments, and it's really good if you are buying dry pigments just to look at the safety labels, and also just to be really careful with not making too much dust, so spoon things carefully. I just want to introduce you to some of these pigments. So what we're going to use today, I've picked, this is a pigment called whiting. It's basically a chalk-based calcium carbonate pigment. This is called a red ochre, and this is a lamp black. This is a kind of reddish pigment which I collected from just up the road, and this one here is a sort of yellowish colour, and that is from a place called the Lizard. And the last one, chalk. Okay, you need to get your egg, and the first thing you need to do, it's a bit like cooking, you need to separate the egg white from the egg yolk. So get 2 cups or jars, whatever you're using, ready to catch the egg white and the egg yolk. So, oh, actually, I want to. The first thing you need to do, you kind of pass the egg yolk between the cups, the eggshells, just being careful not to break the egg yolk. So you've got to catch basically the egg yolk in the palm of your hand, and you want to get rid of all of the egg white, because egg tempera paint is made just with the egg yolk. So the next thing that happens is you get a piece of kitchen towel, and you have to hold your hand very flat so as not to break the egg yolk, and you just want to kind of dry the egg yolk, and you have to do this pretty quickly so it doesn't stick. You just roll it off. Now, I think I said earlier that you need fresh eggs, and the reason why is because the egg yolk is contained in a sac, and as if the eggs are a little bit old, that sac becomes much weaker. So this is a pretty fresh egg. The next thing you have to do is you have to pick the egg yolk up. And this is where it generally gets messy and I might fail. That's okay. I've got 4 other eggs to play with. Whoa. And so, I'm going to try and get rid of that. Ooh. Whoa! I didn't even need to pierce it. But you can see that's the sac that it's contained in. So you don't want that. You don't want the egg whites. Once you've caught your egg yolk, what I do is I just add in a tiny bit of water. You don't want too much, just a little bit, and you can just mix it around. I've got a jar just to give it a shake. The reason why I do that is because egg yolk glue dries incredibly fast, almost immediately. So it just, the water just keeps it from drying out so quick. Okay, now you choose one of your pigments, and using a spoon, you just spoon out a bit of pigment, and on your palette make a small mountain. And before you mix in the glue, what I do is just add a tiny bit of water to the pigment, and I just want to make it into a bit of a paste first. You don't want too much water because you don't want to make a paint that's too loose. So just gently smush the pigment together. If this is looking quite dry, so I'm just going to add a tiny bit more water. At this point I want it still to be pretty thick, so when I add the glue it doesn't become too runny. Once you've got that far, kind of try and move it all together and get your egg glue and just add a small amount. You probably want about 1/4 glue to pigment, and mix it round again. Something I actually forgot to say earlier on with equipment, I really don't expect you to have one of these, but for the sake of showing you how to make paint, this implement is called a muller, and it's used in paint making, but you can just as well use something like a palette knife, or a back of the spoon is fine, or a rock. Yeah, so next up I'm just going to smush this all together. Try, if you can, to scrape it all back together. These are really rubbish palette knives that I'm using. That essentially is how you make paint. So once you've made your paint, have a clear up and just move everything aside and get your paper. Traditionally, egg tempera was always painted on panel because it cracks if it's on a flexible surface, but for the sake of experimentation, paper is totally fine. I never really know what I'm looking for when I paint. I just kind of go for it and explore mark making and what the paint can do. So go for it with mark making and have fun with the paint. I think what's amazing about egg tempera paint is it creates a really flat colour, so it's really different to oil or acrylic paint. that's it.